Hi, I'm Austin Eaton with Coldwell Banker Burnett. I'm here to talk today about closing costs. I get the question quite often from both buyers and from sellers. What are my closing costs going to be? And there's some good rules of thumb to go by here, at least here in the state of Minnesota. The buyer is generally going to pay between 3% and 4% of the total purchase price in closing costs. And here are some elements that go into that. First piece, if they're going to take a mortgage out, would be loan origination fees. And those fees can be broken down by the loan officer that helps the buyer secure their loan and move through that process. Title search and title insurance are another big piece of the puzzle in terms of closing costs. There'll be title insurance both for the lender and for the owner. The lender will always have title insurance. The owner has the option to buy their own title insurance through this process, and it's recommended that they do so. There's a closing service fee for performing the transaction, and we're taking everything securely from start to finish in the closing. And then there's mortgage taxes and registration. This is different from the city and county taxes that a homeowner has to pay throughout the ownership of their home. This is an initial fee or initial tax for the mortgage and for the registration thereof. A seller can expect to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% in closing costs at the closing table for selling their home. And the elements of this are a closing service fee, just as the other side of the table has, and then also a state deed tax, which generally runs about 0.3% of the actual sales price. Now, there are some twists in closing costs. Often in sales, let's say under $300,000, buyers will be asking for closing costs to be paid for by the seller, and it's a form of negotiation. Often a first-time home buyer or somebody who is buying in the lower segment of the market will need some help or at least be stretching in order to make a good down payment and then not have a lot of cash left over for closing for these fees here. So I often see, especially if a home is fairly new on the market, I'll see a buyer come in and offer full price for the home, but ask for some help in closing costs. Ask for the seller to pay 1%, 2%, 3% of closing costs. In fact, it's allowable by some on some loans that the buyer asks for 6% in closing costs. That's not very common these days in a seller-oriented market, but it is allowed. Now, it is all part of the negotiation. The seller can still come back and say, you know what, we're not going to pay your closing costs, or we'll pay for a smaller portion of the closing costs. The negotiation process can be a lot of fun, and it's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. If you found this video interesting and helpful, please like us down below, as well as sharing the video and passing it on to some friends. If you know of anybody who could find this useful or could use my help in buying or selling, I would love to be there for them. Thank you.